Before flashy digital dashboards, climate-controlled seats, and fancy infotainment screens, there was one cab that made truckers feel like kings of the road. And it didn't come from Scania, ERF, or MAN. No, this one came straight out of Sweden and quietly rewrote the rulebook, the Volvo F10. It wasn't just a cab, it was a mobile fortress, a rolling home, a driver's best mate on the longest hauls. And once you stepped inside, nothing else felt quite right again. When the F10 launched in 1977, it didn't need to scream for attention. Its sleek, aerodynamic shape and understated grille did the talking. But what really made this lorry a game changer was what happened once you climbed inside. Truckers who'd been used to clunky layouts, metal dashboards, and rattling bones got hit with a shock. Comfort, real, genuine comfort. This wasn't just another bare-bones cab with a seat and a steering wheel. This was Volvo saying, "Hey mate, how about we make your life a little easier?" The F10 introduced a cab interior that felt like it belonged in a car. The seats were adjustable and actually supportive. The steering column tilted and telescoped. The dash layout made sense. You could reach everything without needing orangutan arms. And the noise insulation? Game-changing. You could actually hear your own thoughts at 80 kilometers per hour. For long-haul drivers who lived out of their trucks, this was a revelation. You weren't just working in a truck, you were living in it. And the F10 made that life bearable, even enjoyable. Volvo didn't just throw in some cushions and call it a day. The engineers obsessed over the details. They made the sleeper bunk wider and more padded. They added proper ventilation. They gave the driver somewhere to stash their gear without cramming it behind the seat. For the first time, a lorry cab felt like it had been designed by someone who'd actually driven one. And that made all the difference. And it wasn't just about comfort. The F10 brought performance to match. Powered by a rock-solid 10-liter inline-6 turbo diesel, it wasn't the fastest truck on the road, but it had grunt, smooth, steady, reliable torque that kept the load moving no matter the gradient. Paired with Volvo's 8 or 16-speed gearboxes, it gave you control in a way that made even the toughest routes feel manageable. The engine was planted and the ride was smooth thanks to that all-new cab suspension system Volvo introduced. It soaked up the road like nothing else out there at the time. Truckers started noticing, then they started talking. Word spread across depots and truck stops. Have you been in the new F10 yet? Suddenly, drivers who'd sworn by their Leylands or Bedfords were eyeing Volvos. It didn't take long for the F10 to dominate Britain's long-haul fleets. Eddie Stobart, you bet they had them. So did just about every serious haulier with a reputation to protect. These weren't trucks you bought to save money. They were trucks you bought to keep your best drivers happy and on the road. The F10 became a culture. It showed up in magazines, in collector calendars, even in songs and stories told around truck stop tables. You'd hear tales about drivers doing runs from London to Milan without needing a single nap outside the cab. That's how livable it was. You had your bunk, your privacy, your tools, and your rhythm. It made the lonely life of a trucker feel a little more human. But perhaps what really cemented the F10 in drivers' hearts was how it aged. You could put 500,000 miles on it and the door would still shut with a reassuring thunk. The gearbox would still click into gear with that satisfying mechanical clunk. And the cab still felt tight, still felt right. It became the truck that men remembered fondly, even after they'd moved on to newer, flashier rigs. Volvo knew they were onto something and kept the updates coming. The F10 evolved steadily. Newer interior trims, updated headlights, better electronics. But the soul of it stayed the same. It remained that smooth, quiet, driver-first lorry that set the bar so high in the first place. And when Volvo eventually moved on to the F12 and beyond, drivers didn't forget the one that started it all. Some still haven't. You'll still spot them at vintage truck shows, freshly polished, engines purring like it's 1985 all over again. A few are even still working, hauling local loads or living quiet lives in owner-operator fleets. But every now and then, you'll hear that signature Volvo hum on a quiet road, and you'll know the F10 isn't gone. Not really. By the time the 1980s hit full stride, the Volvo F10 wasn't just a popular truck. It had become the benchmark. Haulage companies weren't asking if they should buy an F10. They were asking how many. And drivers, they were practically begging to get behind the wheel of one. The days of putting up with bone-rattling, drafty cabs were over. The F10 had proved that comfort wasn't a luxury. It was a necessity. and now every other brand was scrambling to catch up. But while competitors were rushing to add extra padding and refine their ergonomics, Volvo just kept refining. The F10's evolution through the 80s saw smarter wiring, better air suspension setups, and more attention paid to how drivers actually lived in their cabs. They added extra shelving, better heaters. Some models even came with electric mirrors and early air conditioning setups, which in the UK felt like luxury hotel features in a working-class lorry. And all of it was wrapped in that quiet, tidy Swedish design philosophy. Not overdone, not cluttered, just smart. Meanwhile, out on the roads, the F10's legend was being carved mile after mile. From Scottish timber routes to Spanish produce runs, you couldn't go 20 minutes on a motorway without seeing a white-cabbed Volvo with that proud red grille badge. They became the truck of choice for international hauliers. Why? Because they lasted. The engines could go hundreds of thousands of miles with proper care, and they were easy to work on. The parts were solid, the cabs didn't fall apart, and perhaps most importantly, the drivers didn't feel broken after a 12-hour shift. Talk to anyone who drove one in their prime, and you'll hear the same thing. It was the cab, mate. The F10 just felt right. It wasn't a truck that bossed you around. It worked with you. You could drive it all day, sleep in it all night, and wake up ready to go again. It earned trust. And in an era when many drivers practically lived in their lorries for days or weeks at a time, that trust meant everything. The sleeper cab especially became a defining feature. No longer just a padded bench behind the seats, Volvo gave drivers an actual sleeping area. Roomy, well ventilated, with just enough space to store your gear, kick off your boots, and wind down. And they didn't just slap it on the back and call it good. The whole cab was built with the driver's rhythm in mind. Rest, drive, eat, rest again. It made a grueling job just a bit more manageable. And in the tough, unfiltered world of 80s trucking, that made the F10 more than just a vehicle. It became a lifeline. Fleet owners noticed something too. The F10 wasn't just keeping drivers happy, it was keeping them loyal. Drivers were turning down newer trucks just to stay with their F10. Word spread. If you want to keep your best men, put them in a Volvo. And it worked. Some fleets built their whole image around F10s. Custom liveries, branded gear, owner-operators kept them pristine, detailing them like show cars between runs. The truck was becoming part of a lifestyle. And while other lorries often found themselves scrapped after a few years of hard graft, the F10s lived on. Many were handed down, sold privately, or converted for specialty uses. Some were turned into show trucks. Others became recovery rigs or rigid conversions. And even when they were finally retired, they weren't forgotten. People remembered their first F10 the way you'd remember your first flat, your first dog, or your first proper pub fight. With nostalgia, with pride. Eventually, the F10 gave way to the more powerful F12 and later the revamped FH series. But it never truly disappeared. It left a legacy stamped into British haulage culture, a standard by which every other truck got judged. And for many, even today's high-tech, ultra-modern Volvos don't hit quite the same. They're better on paper, sure. More efficient, more powerful, safer. But that raw analog connection, that feeling of driving, not being driven, that lived and breathed in the F10. Go to any classic lorry rally today and there's guaranteed to be one or two shining F10s sitting proudly among the Scania 143s and ERF ECs. Restored, repainted, kept alive like old soldiers with stories still etched into their steel. Step into one and the smell alone, diesel, fabric, road dust, takes you right back to a time when trucks weren't rolling computers, when you knew every rattle, every gear, and every bump in the cab. That's what the F10 gave the world. A sense of place, a sense of dignity, a sense that even in the dirtiest, coldest, most demanding jobs, you still deserved a bit of comfort, a bit of sanity, and a bit of class. And in doing that, Volvo didn't just build a great truck, they earned a permanent place in the hearts of British drivers everywhere.